Hi, Future Saya here. Just as a forward to this podcast episode, excuse the city noises in the background. This is kind of supposed to be just like an informal, hey guys, I'm not dead type video. So yeah, I'm sitting in my living room, and yes, my windows are terrible, and yeah, there's a lot of city noise, but hopefully, the podcast we put out next after this is going to be of much higher quality, I will say. But yeah, thanks for being here anyways. It shouldn't be too bad, but you might hear a little police siren, a little motorcycle, a little car here and there. So you're not tripping. It's not your ears, it's me. Anyways, back to the episode. Hi everyone. Welcome back to the Mis-sai-llaneous podcast. It has been years. It has been 2 years, not to the exact date, but it has been little years since the last time I have posted an episode. October 13th, 2022, to be exact. And so I thought I'd just come up here and give you guys a live update. Say hi, say that there's new and fun things coming, and inform you guys on my life going forth. Before we get started, of course, follow me on all of my medias in case you'd like to see any updates. I write poetry now. It's been 2 years and I now write poetry and fiction, so if you'd like updates on that as well, I will put the links to my other media in my bio as well as the description to this podcast episode. But without further ado, let me tell you exactly where I have been for the past 2 years. This was originally supposed to be a YouTube video. That did not work. There's nothing wrong with my camera, and there's nothing wrong with my SD card, or I don't know. It wasn't on my SD card, and so I was like, you know what? Maybe this is a sign that I am not that much of a vlogger and that I belong in the podcast medium. So here we are. Where I have been for the 2 years. Oh my goodness. It has been quite the ride. The start of it, where do I even start? Let's start fall 2022. Fall 2022, after a very tumultuous relationship, I decided it was time for me to go back to school. I had taken a break. I was class of 2020, the whole debacle about COVID and high school and blah, blah, blah. We don't need to get all into that anymore because we all know what was up with that. But I had taken a break from studying anthropology, being a minor I think I was a minor in African American Studies at the time. And that really explains my second podcast episode, which I think is so funny. I even tried to delete that one, but I think I'm going to keep it up just as a progress thing. But I was like, okay, I cannot stay in this environment. This is not conducive to my learning, whatever. So I took a break, and then I was working, and I was like, okay, cool, I'm gonna work and write, and then maybe I can publish something by then. That is not how that turned out, because I just got consumed in work. Work pisses you off. Work is a thing that pisses you off terribly, so that you don't have any energy by the time you get home, and you can't do any of the things that you're passionate about. And if there's one thing about me, is that I am not one to pull all-nighters anymore. I did that in high school, and I was like, okay, this is enough. So now I am here, and I am valuing my sleep and valuing my rest, and it just was not a conducive time for my creative prowess. And I got into a tumultuous relationship, and I was like, okay, it's time for me to leave, and it's time for me to go back to school. And so I commuted to school Tuesday and Thursday that semester of fall 2022. It was fun. It was a pretty good semester. I felt, the passion was refurbished. I felt like I was shining again. I was building myself back up. I was getting to my anthropological bag again. I was like, oh my gosh, yes, like, I love anthropology. This is exactly what I was meant to be doing. This is what I chose all along. Then, fast forward to spring semester 2023. It still was a great semester. I moved into a dorm. I had 3 amazing dorm mates. I got really lucky with that because it could have been such a tragic experience. But I got 3 super cool dorm mates. Was really thriving at that time. I felt like I could get involved more. I was learning a lot more in my major and my minor especially. It got to a point where one of my professors was like, are you sure you don't want to be an English major? And I was like, don't make me have this life crisis right now. I'm just going to stick with anthropology. But thank you so much. And I was like, okay, what's my next step? And me and my best friend have always wanted to get an apartment together. And so I was like, I need a job. And so then I started working a full-time job while being in school. And it wasn't that bad because I was working full-time. But by the time I got hired, it was like around April. And so the semester was like coming. It was like halfway through the semester. Semester was coming to a close. So it was pretty manageable. Got a remote job in the medical field, and that was very enjoyable. It was a very new experience. I was super nervous to interview because this is not something that I am experiencing at all. My mom actually was the one who helped me get this job. Shout out to her. But it was in medical research and it was remote, and I was like, this is great for a college student. Also, I was making a good amount of money. I really was, and it was a really good experience and a really good job to get just a whole lot of things under my belt when it comes to experience. And so that job helped me a lot when it came to being able to afford my apartment that I have now, and just being able to like make my own and start branching out into my own comfort zone and like flapping my wings a little bit, you know. So then fast forward again to August 2023. I move into my new apartment with my best friend. Yay! And there's a semester coming up. And so fall semester 2023 was when I kind of started to, I'm going to say waver. I'm not going to say falter, but I am going to say waver. It was rough because there was something inside of me that made the semesters get exponentially harder and made my attitude about my job exponentially more negative. And I like to think of it as like this physical culmination of a feeling within me, to where I was like, okay, there's something about the anthropological field where I'm hitting a wall. And it seems like I cannot for the life of me go forth in this. And I'm not going to lie to you, if there are any anthropologists watching this, or anyone who knows me personally, who has been in these classes with me, listening to this, it was archaeology. I'm not going to lie to you. Archaeology as a discipline is very interesting. But when I had to learn about it to that extent, I was like, yeah, you lost me. It was so boring to me. I was like, I do not feel passionate about this. I was more of like the linguistic anthropologist type of person, which looking back on it now is why I'm a writer now. But I was just hitting a roadblock, and it was making me drained and unhappy, irritable. I was a very stanky person at the time, and I was not fucking with it at all. And so yeah, that semester was really rough. I failed a few classes. Of course, that tore me up, being the always star student that I have always been in the past. That tore me up. And things started happening at my job that was just making me so unhappy. I was like, what is going on? And within all of this, I was surrounding myself in spaces that had to do with creatives and like art, being an artist. I wanted to branch out a little bit more and get involved in places that were harboring black artists, that were harboring artists in general, that were just acting as a place of inspiration. Because during this semester, I wasn't taking any of my minor classes, I wasn't taking creative writing classes, and I was like, that might actually kill me. And so I need to either deliberately write, or I need to surround myself with art just to offset, the expected science of me that was anthropology. And I didn't choose anything super hard or sciencey like biology. I chose anthropology, which is a very respected scientific discipline, but it's still kind of humanities and artsy of the sciences. But that's all to say that I finally had to listen to all of the callings and all of the internal turmoil going on within me. So then by spring semester 2024, I was like, okay, something's got to give. I was still failing classes, but it was I could barely get out of bed. Having full-time work in between being a student full-time was not working for me at all. And so something had to give. And what was the first thing that I gave was school, because I was like, I need to reevaluate what I'm here for. I was working so much that I was not involved in any clubs. I wasn't involved in anything that I wanted to be involved in because I just didn't have the time. And I also felt extremely disconnected from the discipline as a whole. Nothing wrong with the discipline, but something felt off. And a red flag that popped up in my head, honestly, was that I was much more excited about my class that had to do with the history of movies, and much more excited about my class that had to do with nature writing. It was one of my creative writing minor classes than I was for the majority of my anthropology classes. And that was telling to me. I was like, okay, that is interesting, because I still didn't dislike anthropology. I love anthropology to this day, but it was different. Something felt different. And I think that in addition to my job and just how mentally exhausting it got for me, I just couldn't feel like a functioning human being anymore. And so I pulled out of school. I was like, I can't do this anymore at this time. I need to shift gears. And so I pulled out of school around, I would say like before midterm, not right before midterm, so like around that time. And then as I was continuing to work, I was like, okay, things have kind of improved. Like, I'm not in school. I'm feeling a little shitty about not being in school, because there has never been a time, other than the one time I took a break, where I was not in school, because I love school. I love school. I'm a school girly. And so it was just so hard for me. All of the pieces of my identity were being taken away from me. Soccer had gone first. I was like, okay, it's taken me 4 years, if I'm being honest, to get over not being a soccer or being a student athlete anymore, because that was such a huge pillar of my being. And then school was taken away, and I was like, without soccer and without school, who am I as a person? Like, who am I? And while I was working, I was trying to figure that out, and I just felt like, I'm so tired. Like, I cannot figure it out even as I work. I just felt so disconnected with life at the time, and my finances weren't where I wanted them to be. Even though I was making good money to be able to survive, I wasn't making the money that I wanted to make. They were cutting my hours anyways, and so I was like, okay, well, I honestly, there's something here driving me out. And I don't even think it was any of the employees, and I don't think it was me. I think it was just the wall that I had encountered. It was pushing me out. It was pushing me somewhere else. And so in the beginning of August, I left. that job as well. And I finally had to listen to my heart and my calling, and I was like, look, there have been that one time in the past where I was like, I'll work and I will write and I will then move forward from there, and it didn't work out. And I tried to do the same here with school, and I tried to do the same here with writing and working, and I still did not have the energy that I needed to have in order to do so. And so that became a huge problem for me, and I had to finally cut it. I had to finally dead it. I said, okay, this is enough. Obviously, I can't work and write at the same time. And writing was something that I have always been passionate about, and that has, I felt like, found me again, because I had left it. I had abandoned it in the past. I'm sorry to writing if you're listening, but I had abandoned you in the past. But it finally found me again. And that is where my journey has led me to now, as of the beginning of September, or September 4th, as I'm recording this right now. Right now, I'm what I call self-employed, which is pretty much just unemployed. And I am happier than ever, though. I've had more opportunities to do things that I love than I have in the past year, if I'm being honest. And I'm just trying to continue to surround myself with fellow artists and fellow artistically minded people to begin to harbor that side of myself again that I had lost so young, but that I was so passionate about, and that I thought, honestly, I think that I'm very good at. I think that I'm a very great writer, and I think it's even funnier that I used to say that I was not great at poetry at all. I was always a fiction writer or story writer. I was like, poetry, the structure, the way it's written, it's just not my thing. Fast forward to now, I read my first open mic night poetry in mid-August, or towards the later part of August, because I went to a poetry event. Mind you, I had been looking for writing groups and poetry events in the city for months before I even committed to that. And the only reason I went to this one is because it's a block away from me and I can see the building outside of my window. So if I knew that this was going on outside of my window and I wasn't there, then I was definitely somewhere where I shouldn't be, which was in my house. And so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna get dressed up. I'm gonna smoke a little, if I'm being honest, because I was so nervous. I knew that there was going to be an open mic night opportunity, and I spent the preceding 3 days deciding if I wanted to do it or not. So when I got there, I was like, oh my gosh. First of all, open mic night sign up started at 5:45. I get there at 5:45, not even really knowing if I was gonna do it or not, which is really funny. But I got there so early because I was so nervous. There was supposed to be a poetry performance the first half, and then open mic night the second half. I was like, okay, cool. I'm looking at the sheet on the table where it's just put in your email, and we'll send you, newsletters and events that we're doing. I'm like, okay, cool. And then I look to the left, and I see the open mic night sign-up sheet. I'm like, oh, fuck. I'm so early. Oh, my gosh. And so that thing is blank. I'm looking at a blank sheet of paper with just lines where you put your name that say open mic night. And I'm like, why would I be the first person to sign up for this? And then I thought about it, and I was like, well, in school in the past, and anything I do really that has to do with presentation, speech, anything like that, I was always the first to go. I'm like, oh, can I go first? Because if it's shit, then hey, I was the first person to go, and everyone who follows me can do better. They know what not to do. If it's great, good luck to the people who follow me, but I went first because I am not finna follow someone who has done an excellent job and try to compete with that. No. And so I went first, and the poetry performance was beautiful. They did this round robin poetry performance with 6 poets who all had different styles, but the way that they all read their poems in succession was just so beautiful and so great, and I felt so inspired that night. And then there was the intermission, And the entire time before the performance even started, I was nervous. I was like, oh my gosh, hi, my name's Saya. Like, it's my first time here. I'm so nervous. I don't know what to do. I'm reading tonight. I'm the first on the list. Why would I do that? Just rambling, just being a nervous wreck. And the good thing is that one of the performers was also nervous, and so we bonded with that a little bit. But it was just good to feel like it was a safe space for me to finally open up and display some of my art, because that has been my biggest journey so far, is not only vulnerability with myself and others, but vulnerability in showing who I actually am and what I actually want to accomplish and put out and be as a person. And that person is someone who is published, that person is someone who writes as a lifestyle, as a living, and someone who speaks to others, and someone who is vulnerable with others, so that they can be vulnerable with themselves and vulnerable to others as well. And so finally it was time for the open mic night to happen. She was calling 3 at a time, so she says Saya, and then she says 2 other names, and I go up first to go, and I'm like, and I just, when I'm nervous, I'm a talker, and I'm super honest, and I was like, this is my first time here, this is the first time I'm ever doing this. I had taken a break from writing in general because people thought I was smart. They were like, you should do STEM. I was like, cool. And I said, before I performed it, I was like, I'm back where I belong. And if you're interested in seeing my first reading, I have it posted on my YouTube. I'll put that in the description to this episode. But it was so interesting to be up there, and you can tell in my voice that I'm so nervous if you go and watch the video, but it felt so freeing to finally get that out. I felt like poetry had finally found me, like I had been searching for it this entire time. And like, I remember taking a poetry and fiction class one semester and saying that I wasn't good at poetry in that class, writing poetry, and having people say that it was so good. And even to this day, I'm not quite sure if I'm at the stage yet where I am fully recognizing my linguistic prowess and really being able to tell people like, hey, like, I'm a writer and I think I'm pretty good. I can tell people that, but it's different when you know what you're putting out is something of quality and something that you want other people to notice as something in your portfolio. I think I'm getting there very soon, but it has been a little bit difficult to come to terms with that. But after I did the poetry reading, it was like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. I felt like I was glowing. Maybe it was the high, maybe it was spiritual, I don't know. But when I was done, people, did their poems, an amazing array of people, a very safe space, and I'm so grateful for taking the time to go and do that. But afterwards, when people greeted me and they told me they liked my poem, they were telling me that I was glowing, that this seemed like something that I was supposed to be doing, and I was just so happy and so grateful. I swear my smile could not be taken off of my face from this moment, because it did feel like something that I was supposed to be doing. It did feel like an event that I was supposed to attend. And I think that something unique about this is that all of the events that they had beforehand that I didn't attend, I kind of beat myself up for not attending them. I was like, okay, like, you're just pussy. Like, you're scared, it's okay. You're scared, you're feeling fear. Whatever, you didn't go, but next time you're gonna suck it up and you're gonna go. But this time I decided to go within the fear, and it was probably one of the best things that I've ever done, and that I will always remember when I'm sitting in the future with like an interview with, I don't know who the famous interview people are gonna be in the future, but let's just say Oprah, for example. I'm in an interview with Oprah, and I'm like talking about my new book, that's getting published. I'm talking about my movie adaptations from that book. And this will always be a memory that I will remember, because this felt like the starting point to when I finally recognized myself as not just an aspiring writer and an aspiring poet, but actually as a writer and a poet. And I had given up the label of aspiring beforehand, but I still was kind of in the space where I was like, okay, I'm gonna try, and I'm going to put on this hat and put on this jacket of being a writer, and hopefully no one sees through my jacket. It's kind of like the Muppet Man, I felt like a scrambled mess within the jacket and trench coat of an actual writer and an actual poet. But now I feel comfortable in said trench coat. I feel like it fits me. I feel like I got it tailor-made to myself. And the fear is still there. The fear is still there because I'm self-employed and I don't quite know where I'm going in the future. I'm not in school. I do plan on going back to school because I do want to get my degree. But honestly, I might be starting over and getting it in English or getting it in poetry, something of those sorts, because things are changing within me. These past 2 years has been like an incredible bout of transformation, and especially these past like 6 months, if I'm being honest, have been huge bouts of transformation. And I just had to feel the fear that I felt and do it anyways, which is a really good book that I will also link down in the description below. But in the past, fear had driven me to kind of just be stuck and paralyzed, and now I feel like fear is finally lighting a fire under my ass. My relationship with having faith in things and being uncertain, and my relationship with the unknown has always been difficult for me because I have always seen tangible results in the past. Soccer, you can see when you improve your game, you can see when you win, you can see when the team develops. I was on varsity all 4 years. Like, you can see when you're good. You can see your grades in school. You can see where you excel. People give you that validation, but now I have to validate myself, and that is the hardest part because I have no idea where my next validity is going to come from when it comes to me self-employing myself as a full-time writer and a full-time poet. I have a habit of talking myself out of things, and this is something that still working my remote job, I felt like I could no longer talk myself out of, or no longer do the thing where I'm like, okay, I'm going to work and I'm also going to write as a compromise. This was something that I felt like I had to dig into full time because it was going to eat me from the inside out if I had not followed this path. I remember writing in my journal that this felt like something literally scratching at me and from the inside out, because I was still trying to preserve this outside shell of who I was in 2020, of who I was before COVID, of who I was, being a student and being a worker. But your intuition and life and the universe and God will tell you when it's time to change. They really will conspire together and give you sign after sign after sign that it is time to move. And it was time for me to move. I was so stagnant and I was so stuck. And I felt so still and so irritated and so restless, where I was like, something's gotta give. Some shit's gotta shake. And so it was a risky decision, quitting my job. I'm not gonna lie. It has been an incredibly risky decision. But I was feeling physically called to do so. I felt like my physical body was going to give out if I hadn't made this decision to continue. And obviously, it has been proven to be the right decision as I'm on this podcast again. I'm talking to you guys, and I'm thankful to be here. And I'm thankful for you guys for getting this far and for listening, because this is something that I have been wanting to pick back up within the span of 2 years. But I just have not had the time, have not had the energy, have not had the passion. And now I do, because I listened to my inside. I listened to my passion. I listened to what I want to do. I listened to my intuition, and I also listened to myself, and not listening to other people and the way that they think that my life is supposed to go. And not even in a malicious way, but in a way where they're only telling me what they know best because they have lived their life. And as much as I'm confident about that, I'm still very much afraid because I don't know where I'm headed next. But I know what I already have done. And I already have done a lot. On my Instagram, I released 2 zines with a collection of, I think, 5 to 6 poems for each zine. So that's about 10 to 12 poems that I've already written and put out to the public, and people have been giving me love, giving me support, and I'm so thankful for that. On my Tumblr, I've been brain dumping more. I have this thing called Thoughts blogs, where I kind of just talk and I brain dump out onto the forum, and then I post it, and hopefully people feel like it's relatable and that they can learn something from it. I'm in the works of creating my poetry book. I'm in the works of creating my novel. And it just seems like all the things have accumulated in my past for my highest good to where I am now. And I can't sit here and say that I'm unsatisfied because things are still left up in the air and things are left unfinished. Because I'm very grateful and I'm very happy as to where I am right now. I'm broke and I'm happy and I'm a writer. And there's nothing more in this world that I would want at this very moment. And it feels like it's really only up from here. I have no clue what my future holds, but hopefully you guys will be here to continue with me on that journey. I promise, I will be up here to talk to you guys much, much more about different topics that I want to talk about and that I love. I'm going to be on my YouTube. I'm probably going to do more readings and more artistic endeavors, figure out how to record videos and not have to resort to the podcast medium because this, that, or the third. But honestly, there's not much more I can say other than it has been a crazy 2 years that has led me exactly where I need to be right now. And I'm very grateful for still having this platform and for still wanting to be great and feeling like I have a destiny to be great. And yeah, that's all I have for today. That has been an update on my life for the past 2 years. Of course, thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed that little life update. I hope that something touched your soul. I hope that something resonated. Let me know if, you relate to something. Let me know in your rating of my podcast if I had said something that clicked or if I had said something that you agree with. Make sure to follow my podcast Instagram. I'll put it in the description, of course, Mis-sai-llaneous. And yeah, I just thank you for being here, and until next time.